Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Tailgate Pregame Show. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola, and I'll be joined today by the publisher of the rival site Tiger Details, Jimmy Smith, and by Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein to talk about the FSU-LSU matchup in New Orleans on Sunday night. All right, guys. Well, first of all, thanks for joining us. It's probably the weekend we've all been waiting for. Florida State opened up against Duquesne last weekend, but I think this is the game all Florida State and LSU fans have been waiting on since the end of the 2021 season. But Fish, obviously, you and Jimmy go a long way back. But Jimmy, certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we're going to jump right in with Jimmy to talk about a little bit about his thoughts on LSU, the new staff, the players. They've brought in about 16 transfers and just kind of work our way through the game. But Fish, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, Jimmy, first question, Coach Orgeron, hometown guy, won a national championship at LSU. They now go to kind of a different coach, more of an X's and O's type coach. How has the transition been as far as you're concerned? And what are the expectations of, LSU Tiger fans this year in year one?
Yeah, I think the change was honestly welcomed by all, whether it be fans, coaches, players. I think everyone welcomed the change. There needs to be more structure in Baton Rouge. If you go from Les Miles and all his everything surrounding Les Miles to Ed Orgeron and winning championships along the way, the thought's always been if LSU gets a competent coach that's structured and can provide discipline, how good could this program be? So you have a guy with that track record in place. The team took to it really well, surprisingly. I think, I expected there to be a little turmoil and perhaps some guys being unhappy and wanting to leave. But like I said, everyone's welcomed the change. And I think that's just a sign that the players themselves knew that they needed a little more and a little more structure within the program.
Well, to piggyback on Fisher's questions about Kelly, one of the things that I know several of the coaches on his staff, including Joe Sloan. What is your overall thoughts on the staff in its entirety, maybe versus what LSU's had the last several years?
Yeah, I think top to bottom, there's really good coaches here. A lot of good X's and O's guys. I mean, your running back coach has been a head coach at the D1 level for the last 5-6 years, right? Mike Denbrock and all that he's done, and being able to get someone like Matt House from the NFL and his experience both in college and the NFL. So he knows what it takes to win on the college level as well. And then I love Joe Sloan, guys like that. Cortez Hankton, I think, is a proven commodity as a coach and a player developer. So across the board, I think it's a solid staff. It's quite different than what we're used to here. We're used to a really heavy LSU, Louisiana feel throughout the staff. There's only a few guys from within the state's borders. So that's kind of unique. You've kind of seen it play out in recruiting, kind of going out nationally, going into some of these Catholic schools around the country. It almost feels like Notre Dame type recruiting, honestly, right? With the schools they're going into and the regions they're going into. But across the board, I think it's a strong staff, certainly one capable of winning. All these guys have done it at high levels. Denbrock's led Cincinnati offense in recent years. They've had a ton of success. Brian Kelly's had a ton of success where he's been. So there's no reason for me to believe that this staff isn't capable of winning big.
Yeah, you look at Jaden Daniels. He's a transfer that came in from Arizona State. They have Garrett Nussmeier and Walker Howard, who was, a really top-rated quarterback. These guys have all been competing for this starting job. How have these three performed so far, and who do you think has the best chance of starting on Sunday night?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Jaden that gets the start. And what I think is unique about this problem, we hear the old adage, if you have a quarterback battle, that means you don't really have a quarterback. I think LSU has multiple guys that could play at a high level right now. I think Garrett Nussmeier is ready to play. I think LSU feels like he's ready to play. Jaden Daniels just brings a level of experience that they don't have anywhere else on that roster and brings another dynamic. He's a true threat with his arm and his legs. And when you have some question marks on the offensive line, I think that also gave him a little nudge in this race. So I think he's going to be the one that takes the field. Wouldn't surprise me to see someone like Nussmeier steal some snaps along the way. But I think it's going to be Daniel's show out of the gate. And as long as he performs well, it'll probably be his show for the foreseeable future.
Well, you mentioned the offensive line, and of course, one of the things that stands out to anybody that does a scouting report is you have a true freshman line up at left tackle against Florida State. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to every rule. We've seen freshmen start at Florida State as an offensive tackle, going back to Pat Tomlin back in the late '80s, early '90s. So, I guess my question to you is it Will Campbell that good a player to be starting at left tackle? Is it more of a reflection of the room as a whole, or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Campbell would be in this lineup, would be in almost any lineup in the country. Now, whether that be at left tackle out of the gate, I don't know. I certainly think he's capable and he's going to become a really good left tackle. But I mean, he came out of spring with the starting nod. And I think that says a lot, right? True freshman making that transition. It didn't take long for him to build that trust within the coaches and the players themselves and his ability to handle his own. I was able to watch him in a scrimmage. He can certainly adjust and adapt to the speed of the college game. He brings that physicality, he plays with a mean streak. I didn't see anything during that scrimmage that made me concerned, for their ability to play at a high level at that position. So, but they don't really have a lot of tackles on the roster either. If it wasn't for Will Campbell, I don't know who they'd be playing there. Their right tackle as of 2 weeks ago is 370 pounds. He's been kicked inside the guard in recent practices. So they don't really have a lot of guys that are light on their feet that can hold that edge and play that edge. But I think he's going to be a special one. It wouldn't surprise me to see Will be a 3-year type guy, top 5, top 10 pick in the draft. I think he has that type of potential.
And how would you
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Fish?
No, I was just going to piggyback. Miles Frazier is a guy that Florida State went after. They really wanted him. I know that Florida State thought they were going to land him. How's he doing in that offensive line room and on the practice field?
Yeah, he's held down the starting guard spot since he's been there. I think he's capable of playing left tackle at LSU. But I think with what Will was able to convince them of in the spring, they said, well, let's just get our best 5 on the field and play Frazier inside. I think they think long term he could kick out back to tackle, which is the position he's used to. But he's come along really well. They feel really good about him. They feel like he's one of their better linemen. I expect him to see 80+% of the snaps on Sunday evening, and someone that they're going to run behind. I believe. I think they think he can move the line of scrimmage, and with that pull game, I think he moves well enough in space too. You'll see him actively involved in the pull game. So I think he's going to be a big asset for them. They think highly of him, and they think he's a future pro.
Yeah, and obviously everyone's aware that, by now everyone's aware that LSU expects to be really good at wide receiver. So we do want to get your thoughts on that. Obviously at running back, you're going to be without John Emery Jr. for at least 2 games. Noah Cain is transferred in from Penn State. Who else might show up at running back for LSU, and what are your expectations from that group, particularly for this week?
Yeah, I think for the first few weeks with Emery out, that running back group is an area of concern. I think for one, the depth and the lack of versatility within the group. Noah Cain's a good running back, but he's more of a between the tackles, downhill type runner, where Emery gave you some of that dynamic ability out of the backfield in the passing game. A guy that could take a draw 50 yards, a guy that could take a swing pass and change the scoreboard. So I don't think they have that within the group right now. I think you're going to see a committee. You're going to see Cain get probably the majority of the snaps here. But you have a former guy, Josh Williams, who's now on scholarship, former walk-on. He's probably going to get some snaps. Monty Goodwin, a sophomore that they received from Alabama last year, probably get some snaps as well. He can give you a little something different out of the backfield. But nobody possesses the game-breaking ability that Emery had. And there's just not a lot of depth there. So they could be an injury away from being in real trouble at the running back position. And we all know how that can go at running back.
Yeah, well, talk to a little bit about the receivers. Obviously, Kayson Boutte is kind of the guy that gets a lot of attention. A lot's expected of Malik Neighbors this year. And what I found fascinating is you don't hear a lot about Jack Besh, who led the team with 43 receptions last year. He's almost like third or fourth down that line as far as how when people talk about LSU wide receivers. So just talk about the depth of that room and what do you think it can do for that offense?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a given at this point that LSU is going to have some high caliber receivers rolling out on the field year to year, right? This year, I think they have the potential to be a really dynamic group. Keyshawn Butte certainly has first round caliber potential. A track star in high school, has everything you want. Maybe not exceptional size, but he's every bit 6 foot, pushing 200 pounds, and he's explosive after the catch. Malik Neighbors is a guy that I think could really push for some all SEC teams this year. Probably not going to get first team accolades or anything like that, sharing the ball with Butte and others, but he's a dynamic playmaker, attacks the ball very well. They're going to use him in the slot primarily, but he can affect every level of the field. He's a dynamic receiver. And Jack Besh, last year, kind of a hybrid guy. They played him in that hybrid tight end wide receiver role. He's full-time wide receiver now. He was dealing with some shin splints and some of those things early in fall camp. And so, there wasn't a lot said about him, but I think he's going to have significant moments on Sunday and throughout the season. I think when they go to 4 wide, he'll be heavily involved there, and he'll be the first guy off the bench if a guy like Malik Neighbors needs a breath. But there's other guys too that I think we'll be seeing playing on Sundays. Brian Thomas, a big 6'4" receiver, Kyron Lacey. I mean, these are guys that are going to – LSU probably has 5 NFL caliber receivers on this roster, and I'm not exaggerating. That's what they're going to be rolling out Sunday. So it's really, can they find balance within the offense to allow these guys to make plays downfield, and can they protect? And I think if they're able to do that, they could showcase a dynamic group of receivers.
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting game, and I think it's going to be interesting what you said about whether Nussmeier gets any chances in the game. Jane Daniels starts hot. That probably keeps him in the game. But, I mean, obviously more of the questions heading into this year are on the offensive side of the ball. Am I correct in that? I mean, it sounds like, you kind of know what you got on defense, particularly up front in the front 7.
Yeah, I mean, that front 4 might be as good as anyone in the country. They're great on the interior. They have solid depth. They have dynamic edge rushers, and if they're able to control the line of scrimmage and control the game, there's a lot of transfers on the back end of the defense, but these are solid players. Guy like Greg Brooks, who started 20 plus games for Arkansas since he was a freshman, is now your starting nickel. Seven Banks, highly recruited, has a lot of experience practicing and playing with Ohio State. Now he's in the lineup and guys like that. But ultimately, it's a real fresh group. 4 of your starting 5, if you include the nickel, are transfers. And so how well can they mesh? How quickly can they mesh? You have a first-time corner secondary coach in Robert Steeples. Is communication going to be an issue? Those type of things. So LSU is expecting to have a dominant defensive line. This would be a great week to display that while these guys kind of find their footing and get to learn how to play with one another on the back end.
Yeah, I was talking with Julie Bodwin the other day, and I asked her, I said, what Florida State fans would like to hear is that after that first team front 4 of Ojulari, Smith, Roy, and Gay, what you'd like to hear is that there's not a whole lot of depth behind them. What is the case with the front 4 as far as people behind those 4 that are, obviously major, they're all major college football players, but impactful players?
Yeah, I think, you have Mekhi Wingo, a guy that was freshman all SEC last year at Missouri. Now he slides in as your backup defensive tackle, a dynamic pass rusher type, can really shoot gaps, get penetration, explosive 6 foot, 6'1" type D tackle, but really explosive first step. And then next to him, you have Jacobian Guillory, who set state powerlifting records 2 years ago, highly recruited guy, nearly impossible to move off the line of scrimmage, just very squatty and powerful. So there are 2 defensive tackles, would start for the majority of teams in the SEC, I believe. And then you have a guy like Savion Jones coming off the edge, 6'6", 270 pounds. Sky's the limit with this guy. This guy still learning how to play behind that body. at a high level, but they really like what they have in him. And then you have some high level recruits and a bunch of experience around that group as well. So they're a solid 2 deep at every position on that D line. And I expect to see them try to get a lot of pressure with that front 4 so they can keep that back end in check and not have to, complicate things with blitzes and things like that. And by doing that, they're going to be able to, if they want to do that, they're going to have to make a lot of changes and a lot of rotations on that defensive line, which I expect to see.
I'll jump in real quick. Coach Kelly likes to use the tight end a lot. He utilized it a lot last year against Florida State. I know you guys don't have the tight end that Notre Dame has. You look at someone like Mason Taylor. He's a kid that came from St. Thomas Aquinas, young kid. He's Jason Taylor's son. How has he developed as a player, and will he be involved in the offense this year and on Monday night or Sunday night?
Yeah, I think they're pleasantly surprised with what he's been able to bring. They thought long term he'd be a starter at this program, but I think the thought was a year or 2 into his career, would you see him start to get those significant reps? He's been better creating separation as a receiver than they thought. He's been more reliable as a pass catcher than they first anticipated. When you expect guys moving into the SEC, whether from another conference or high school, you expect the physicality to be a level of adjustment. But remember, the guy has pedigree, right? So he kind of knows what to anticipate. I'm sure it's been drilled into him by his father what to anticipate, on the level of physicality that he'd have to bring. And they've been pleasantly surprised with his ability to do that. Wouldn't surprise me to see him get significant snaps right out of the gate on Sunday. I think he's earned the trust and respect of everyone needed that makes those decisions. So I think he's going to be heavily involved in the rotation. At worst, you'll probably see him in a lot of 2 tight end sets, but wouldn't surprise me at all if you have a lot of single back sets with just 1 tight end on the field or things like that, if you see Mason Taylor get involved in the passing game a bit.
Well, obviously, we were talking about the defense before Fish went to tight ends. I want to go back to the defense real quick. I believe Mike Jones and Craig Benton are going to be the starting linebackers for the Tigers. And obviously, Baskerville was the returning leading tackler. I'm sure he's going to play a lot. Just talk a little bit about what you think of the linebacker group as a whole.
I think that would be the biggest area of question for me on the defense. Greg Penn would be a first time playing significant snaps. They've liked him since he came onto campus last year. They think he's got a lot of potential and be a really good player, but it's unproven at this point. Mike Jones still learning he's a new middle linebacker. Last year was his first time fully playing linebacker as kind of that rover hybrid guy for Clemson in the past. So you still have 2 guys that haven't played at a high level in the SEC conference. So still a lot remains to be seen for me there. Micah Baskerville has been proven. He can play any of the linebacker positions, but he has some physical limitations athletically. And I think that's a reason he's been bumped to the second string here as the leading tackler returning to this program. So I think it's a good unit and they have potential. I just think there's more question marks there than there probably is anywhere else on the defense.
Fish?
No, we basically cover the whole team.
But we do.
Well, hey, I've got a question for you. Kind of what is, Florida State has not had its greatest half decade over the last 5 years. And I think it's been since 2017 since we've had a winning record in Tallahassee. What is kind of the perception of the FSU program entering this game? Maybe not so much from the coaching staff standpoint. I'm pretty sure that they figure they're going to have their hands full on Sunday night, but just from the fan base standpoint, what is the perception of Florida State's football program right now?
I'll tell you a little secret. As a guy that grew up a Florida State fan, I'm a little disappointed in what I've seen in recent years. I grew up in the days of Derek Brooks and all those guys, so I was definitely a fan back in the day. I think there's always respect for Florida programs because even at your lowest points, I think every SEC fan knows that there's talent on these rosters that if it meshes at any given time could be a threat. But I think there's also this understanding that this is one of Florida State's lower points.
But we also know that LSU's isn't perceived to be the national power it once was either. So I think there's some concern that Florida State could present a real challenge here. But I think the majority of LSU fans believe LSU will find a way to win this game, especially in their backyard. Yes, it's a mutual site, right? No. I mean, that's an hour and 10 minutes. That's an hour and 10 minutes from LSU's campus. As soon as the Florida State fans arrive in New Orleans, they're going to realize this is LSU territory. So, you know, I don't think the expectations here are very high for Florida State this year. But I do, and I have heard a lot on the message boards of little chatter like, hey, these guys always have players. We better be careful.
Now, all right, so you mentioned that, you know, there seems to be an air of confidence among the LSU fan base. So we're going to put you on the spot. Give us a prediction for Sunday night. What are we going to be looking at?
Yeah, honestly, I think this game works out well for LSU. You know, I'm not a Florida State expert, but correct me if I'm wrong. But I think the biggest question marks for your program this year might be your offensive line and perhaps your secondary.
Sure.
LSU strengths are their receivers and their defensive line. And football is all about matchups. So in the end here, I think LSU is going to be victorious. I think Florida State's going to have a hard time moving the ball, especially on third down with that defensive line and all that they can do. So I'm going to go 33-17 LSU. But I think going into the fourth quarter, you could be a one possession game. LSU just kind of wears them down later in the ball game.
Well, it's going to be fascinating. I think I think both fan bases are using it as a benchmark for their program as far as where it stands in 2022. And I know we're bringing 30,000 Seminoles to New Orleans, so they're going to try to make a difference in this ball game. But Jimmy, we've got a lot of people listening to this podcast on their way down to New Orleans. Give us some spots that FSU fans need to hit in New Orleans and in Bourbon Street.
Yeah, so around Bourbon Street is really where your treasures are. Bourbon Street, you do it with a camera in hand and mace in the other, right? And you take it for what it is. It's a tourist trap. It's dirty. It's crazy. It's wild. But around the edges of the French Quarter, there's some really good destinations. If you're going to eat, stop at Palace Cafe and get the crab meat cheesecake. They aren't paying me. I don't know management. I'm just telling you now, get the crab meat cheesecake and the shrimp chiffonta. It's one of the best meals you'll ever have. And it's a great atmosphere. Last time we were there, they had guys walking around the table singing. So it's a good place to eat. Fritzl's, if you want to feel some New Orleans jazz, go to this place called Fritzl's on Bourbon Street. It's a little shop. You'll walk past it. You have to ask. Find Fritzl's. It's been there for 120 years. It's an old jazz bar, a lot of history. Louis Armstrong played there, a lot of the greats. And it's just a very intimate setting. You're right on top of the stage. The band interacts with you. And these are some of the best jazz players in the area, if not the country and world. So definitely put that on your list. Those are two great spots to hit.
Well, it'll be easy for people from Florida State to remember. You said the Palace, right? We've got a bar.
Palace Cafe.
Yeah, we have a bar on the backside of the Florida State Duke Campbell Stadium called the Palace Saloon. So that'll register really well with FSU fans. Well, all right. Now we are joined by an FSU legend, JP Peterson. JP is a longtime sports reporter, started on television after graduation here in Tallahassee, I believe on WTXL 27, JP. If
you are correct, sir.
I'm not mistaken. And then he took off for bigger and better things. I think you've had a stop in Atlanta and now very successful in Tampa. We were on the radio there. Now you're doing your own show, a live stream, and I think it may be connected to a radio show. But
that's right. That's right, Pat. I can't keep a job. I get fired everywhere I go. Is that what you're trying to say? Yes.
No, welcome
keep
to
my
the
mouth
world.
shut. Yeah.
Welcome to the world of athletics.
Exactly.
We've all been there. Don't feel
It doesn't matter what you're doing in athletics.
Yeah.
You get hired to get fired.
Hey, step in my office. You've been fired.
But,
I've been there. Fish is
That last radio job I got fired from here in Tampa, I was getting 2 ratings bonus checks and expecting to get a new contract. And they went, yeah, we're going in a different direction. I was like, I literally told the guy, you effing kidding me? He's like, no, we really are. I'm like, this is the first time you ever fired anybody giving them 2 ratings bonus checks? He's like, yeah, that's a first. So yeah.
well, hey,
crap business.
At least you don't continue to go to work for spring pro football leagues that don't make it.
Hey, JP, I'm going to tell you a quick story about me and Jimmy. So the first time I met him was in Jacksonville, and he had told me he could run a combine. So the night before,
When I did.
the night before, Jimmy has his whole pad. He wrote down everything I said. I'm like, all right, this thing's going to go smooth. The next day we go out there, the field's not lined. There's no cones. I mean, I'm like screaming at him in the middle of the field, but we got through it and we're still friends after that. But I told him to step in
journeys, baby. We all got some stories to tell.
You left the part out. 4 years later, you fired me. We're talking about being fired. You fired me.
It took that long.
It took that long. Yeah. I was
Oh,
able to
man.
hold on for 4 years.
Fish thought yelling at you was the worst thing he'd done.
But that's not why we're here.
Fish is one of my favorite people to have an argument with, because as soon as it's over, he's like, all right, let's move on to the next. We've had some debates over recruits.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, so we have
listen, you get in arguments with your friends and stuff. I learned one thing. My wife tells me she's always right. I'm never wrong, or I'm always wrong. So I figure with my friends, I got to win one battle with Pat or Jimmy just to feel good about myself, because at home, I never win a battle. So, it's just how it's going to be.
Yeah. I have a way of fixing that. Get divorced. It's costly, but at least now I just argue with my dog Tally, who's over here. Okay.
And you're right. His dog is named Tally, and it is that named after Tallahassee, Florida. If he ever has another dog, I'm expecting it to be named Bowden, but I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right, JP. Now you are a proud Florida State graduate. You follow the program closely. You have had multiple people on your show this week concerning Florida State. I know Tom Block was on your show.
Yes.
I was on your show last week, pre-Duquesne. You follow this program each and every year, each and every week. Just kind of your, obviously, a quick assessment of Florida State after the Duquesne game. I don't know how much we can gather from that game, but just kind of what your impressions were leaving Tallahassee on Sunday.
Well, I can tell you this, the food in the Champions Club is excellent. Very, very good. So and the view of the football is not so good. Yeah. Very high up in the end zone. But from what I saw, and I watched a little of the TV copy, the thing that really jumped off the page to me was just how the execution was so crisp. Very few penalties. I mean, we didn't have 17 pre-snap penalties, which was fantastic. I just love the way that Jordan ran the offense. The offensive line looked very, very crisp in what they were doing, even with all the new centers that we have in there. I was just very impressed with that. And they seem, Jordan seems very in control of this offense. He was very, very poised, unlike Rodemaker. He just looked, and I just love the professional execution of the offense. The defense looked like it had a lot of energy. They seem faster and more athletic. I mean, you got to consider the opponent, of course, but just for me, the overall appearance of the team, the fight, the continued effort that you saw out there. You didn't see guys just like loafing because it's Duquesne. It just seemed like I talked so much on my show about culture. To me, programs, professional, college, whatever, it's about culture. And it really feels like the culture has completely changed in year 3, really year 2, COVID, I don't count. It seems like Mike Norvell has his imprint on this football team, and I really like what I see. And also I see NFL talent. There, in the running back room, obviously, on defense, you're starting to see guys that you can see moving on to the next level, which we really haven't had a whole lot of in the past 4 or 5 years. So just overall, I just think the program right now looks like it's really, really in a good space. And I'm very optimistic going into LSU. I think we're catching them at a good time. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But
I think
my overall.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the program is moving in the right direction. I cannot quantify what that's going to look like at the end of the year, win-loss wise, but certainly what we've seen in the transformation of the roster, he's continued to do a great job through the portal. We're going to see several starters in this game that came in through the portal, be it a Tatum Bethune from UCF. Trey Benson will obviously come in and out with Trayshawn Ward at running back. Then you've got Micah Pittman and Johnny Wilson, Bless Harris, Dimitri Emmanuel. I mean, it seems like Greedy Vance will play a lot at the nickel corner behind Noles. It's been, he's done a great job of that. But as I think we've talked about this on your show. This team does seem different in that, we have not seen the coaches have to prod the players along at practice. They seem to have bought into what Mike, his vision of things, the way he does things. So I think you're right there. Again, you can't spend you don't know exactly what to gather out of Duquesne, but based off what obviously you've had conversations with people in Tallahassee, Tom, myself, others, I'm sure you've seen them play one game. Let's talk about LSU first, and then let's talk about what your expectations for the program are for this season.
Well, first of all, LSU, I talked to a couple folks from LSU, and on the air, they're very they're very confident in the talent this team has. When I get them off the air, we'll go back to that culture thing. There's a big culture change going on. Brian Kelly is a whole different cat than Ed Orgeron, and probably in a good way for LSU. But this stuff takes time. We saw it at Florida State. You gotta empty the trash and bring in new people, and even you're gonna have holdovers that don't buy in, which you don't find out until you play games, right? So I think they're in a transition process. I mean, LSU still got they got plenty of 5-stars on that roster. They're gonna put a lot of talent out there. They're gonna be well coached. I just don't think the continuity is gonna be there. And when you have 2 quarterbacks, you ain't got any, right? So they've been spending time getting 2 quarterbacks ready. And from what I hear, it's just a work in progress. And Brian Kelly, I never thought he was a good fit for LSU. And I think there's still some people there that think that it's kind of all right, let's see how this works type deal. So I think FSU's catching them in a really, really good spot. Coming off a bad year for LSU, there's probably some confidence issues. They got a lot of different people in different places, and they're trying to pick up a new system. And Florida State's already played a game, which I think is a tremendous advantage. And FSU's better hop on them early before adjustments can be made. And you're in it. For me, this is such a great opportunity. Sunday night, prime time, ABC, nobody else is playing. We have obviously got branding issues. We got to get back to that FSU brand of explosive plays, highlight material, winning big games in prime time situations. And you're not going to get a better situation than this. Catching them early. LSU will be a much better team at the end of the year than they are in this game. It's a neutral site game. This ain't going to be like Baton Rouge. That would be way different because we've all been there and that place is bonkers. There should be, probably 60-40 in the crowd. It'll still be loud, but it's better than Baton Rouge. So I really feel optimistic about this. I think this is a good spot for FSU to make a huge mark, and to get off to a 2-0 start would be it really give this team some confidence that, and you get that swag back, man. For college, you guys know college football is so much about emotion and confidence and swag. Get that swag back, beat LSU, and now you're starting to get a little bit of edge on everybody as you go into games.
Yeah. Now I do want to ask all three of you this question. I think the key matchup in the game is going to be each team secondary versus each team receivers core. LSU is supposed to have one of the best receiving cores in the nation. Florida State's got a influx of new receivers on their side. LSU's brought in a lot of DBs through the transfer, although, as Jimmy has mentioned, very experienced. In fact, I believe it's Brandon Converse. It may be Converse Brandon. I can't remember his last name, but the kid from Oklahoma State played in 51 games at Oklahoma State. So, they're getting some experienced players, but I think that's the key matchup is both teams' wide receivers groups against both teams' DB groups. JP, what's your big matchup of the
I want to hear these other guys talk first. Let's hear the other guys talk first.
Let's go, Jimmy. What's your key matchup?
You got Jimmy.
Well, first things first. If you didn't tell me what school JP went to, I would have been able to guess it.
See my Bobby Bowden football in the background there? My Bobby Bowden personally autographed to me? Yes.
Yeah. It wouldn't have been difficult. And kind of back to your point too, I do think it's an advantage for Florida State, but the disadvantage could be, I mean, they played St. Augustine School for the Blind, right? So there's a big difference from that and LSU. So is it an advantage or is it a disadvantage when you haven't seen the opponent with 4.4 speed and all these type things that LSU be able to bring? But I'll move on to the matchups here. I think the secondaries are going to play a huge part in this game. I think the thing for LSU to kind of limit some of those issues in the secondary is going to be able to get a pass rush from that front four. And can Florida State's offensive line block those guys? I think that's going to play a huge role. If you give these guys time to work on this, secondary that doesn't have a lot of continuity, hasn't been able to gel yet, the things JP was speaking to, if they have time to work downfield, they're going to make some plays. But is LSU going to be disruptive enough up front to really limit those? And I think that's where LSU has a big advantage here. If Florida State has a hard time keeping these guys off their quarterback, it could be a long day. And we've seen that happen in a lot of games. So I think for me, it's the offensive line of Florida State, the defensive line for LSU, and how that matchup plays out. That'll ultimately have the biggest role in the outcome of this game.
Yeah. Yeah, this game's going to come down to the line of scrimmage, like all big games do. And LSU's got a tremendous defensive line. It's a bit of a concern. We've talked about it. FSU, I think, all right in the interior, but it's that outside, those tackles. I saw some of the tackles struggle last week in certain situations. And my big concern is, and I thought FSU secondary was the strength of the team, I saw some of those Duquesne guys get down the field on them. So they've got to get, FSU's D-line is going to have to get more pressure than they got last week. I think they had 1 sack. They're going to have to get more pressure, and hopefully they don't have to just go all out blitz, because like LSU, their secondary can be very good, but it could also, it could be a weakness on that side of the ball. So it'll be interesting. This game's going to come down, though, to the line of scrimmage, the O-line and the D-line.
Well, I'm not making too much of the lack of sacks against Duquesne for one reason. A, they were in the very quick passing game. I mean, they were getting the ball out of his hands as quick as they could. And B, they only threw 17 passes. So they wanted to get in and out of that stadium just as quick as Florida State did. They were there to collect a check and get back to damn Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and their 2,200 seat stadium. So that's exactly what was going on here on Saturday. So listen. I didn't see Jermaine Johnson on the field. I'll grant you that. No. I'm not even sure I saw Keir Thomas on the field, but I do think some of that had to do with how Duquesne game planned. To your point, Fish, I thought the secondary's coverage would be a little bit tighter. They still struggle with play action and people crossers, and then the play that stands out was they faked the divide zone and the quarterback boots out, hits the tight end in the flat. He's wide open, and we've seen that happen for the last couple of years. So crossers have, that crossing patterns, play action is something we saw against Duquesne that I think is a real thing, and you would like to see that shored up. But listen, they were vanilla. They didn't mix up very many coverages. I don't think I saw one run stunt or blitz or games on the in pass rush. So I think it was very vanilla on both sides of the ball, which is to JP's point earlier. I think we're going to see a little bit different version of Florida State against LSU from a schematic standpoint, as well as we would expect, right?
One of the things that I'm interested in hearing from JP, FSU was super aggressive. There was one play that stood out where Tatum Bethune made a tackle on the side. Like, we haven't seen a linebacker make a play like that. But the flow of the defense was so aggressive to that one side. Is LSU going to take that aggressiveness, trying to sneak the quarterback out the backside, bring the tight end across the middle, and hit the tight end in a wide open field? Or does Jaden Daniels take off and run? I do think there's certain things that I did see in that game. While I thought they played very well in that game, FSU was super aggressive, and that's good, and it could be bad. You know that. And LSU is not the team you want to overcompensate on, because they will have a guy wide open and they'll be running into the open field.
I swear to God, that backside tight end, a boot play, I think going back to Miami's tight ends in the 80s,
Yeah.
that play has beaten Florida State so many times.
Coleman Bell, man. Coleman
Oh my
Bell.
God. Back to Kellen Winslow. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, we're not allowed to defend it. I think it's some type of law. It's ridiculous. And it's always, but last year against Notre Dame, right? First
Notre
touchdown,
Dame.
I think it was. I don't know what it is about defending tight ends for Florida State. But I will say that, I'll go along with Fish that Florida State offensive line, once again, is in the crosshairs. It seemed much better not last week. And I know not just pushing around 250-pound kids or 230-pound kids. It's going to be different this week. But they just look bigger. They look better. Their credentials are more. They played more. And I think the running game is the key for FSU. If they've got those three running backs, I think every one of them can play on Sunday. Trey Benson and Toafili has put on some weight, Pat, as you had mentioned. He looked completely different to me. And Trayshawn Ward, all of them. And just they can, and when Norvell was great at Memphis. Remember, he had Antonio Gibson and he had a bunch of great running backs at the same time. And they wore your ass out. And it's going to be tough to do against LSU. I get it. They're deeper and they're much more. But I agree. I'd rather have my tackles moving forward than moving back. Beat them up in the run game, control it, and hope there's some continuity issues on the LSU offense. You can get a couple turnovers, but if FSU doesn't run for at least 150, they won't win.
Yeah,
I don't think they can.
I think they have to rush for over 40 times in the game. I think they have to control the game. This is a game that you want Travis in that 12 to 15, 16 passing attempts. I don't think you want him. You want to be running, play field position, keep the game on their side of the field, make them make mistakes and it doesn't matter how they win. They just have to win it. It doesn't matter if it's ugly. If FSU wins this game 20-17, there's not one Seminole fan that's going to complain that, we could have played better. Just win the game. It doesn't matter. And Norvell, the one thing he's proven, and I'm going to give him a ton of credit, he is very good at scheming up the run. For whatever reason, you could say it's the running backs. They scheme very well to get guys. Last year, their O-line wasn't very good, and they still were able to run the football. And that's huge if they want any shot at winning this game.
You're right about that. Now, 2 years ago, let's go back to 2020.
Yeah.
That was I don't know what you call it. It wasn't much of an offensive line. And, we saw improvement from Willie. It went from Willie. And I like some of the kids. They're great kids on that offensive line as human beings and all of that. But, listen, what he's done to manufacture the running game, you're right. He's done a very good job of it. And listen, if they're able to run the ball if they run the ball 40 times, it's because they're having success running the ball.
Right, exactly.
But that's how I believe they got to win this game. They can't be in the 30s and win this game because one of my friends is like, Travis is going to throw for 20 something attempts. I'm like, if he throws that much, they're losing the game. That's just my belief.
I'm going to say right now, if they run the ball 40 times, Florida State comes back with a win.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that right now. I do want to ask you guys this. Now, Maurice Smith is back on the 2 deep for this week.
Yes.
He did it as a co-starter at center, but we did see Dylan Gibbons play a lot of snaps at center against Duquesne. Would you guys be comfortable with Dylan Gibbons playing the majority of the reps at center? I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm just asking because we saw it. And then obviously that would more than likely slide a guy that I've been very impressed with, Bryson Estes, into the guard slot. How did you guys like Dylan at center? What do you think about the offensive line with him being in the middle?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Fish.
Me personally, and I'm a big Maurice Smith fan. You know that. I think against LSU, you want a bigger, thicker guy in there for this game. Maurice will probably be the better center down throughout the whole season because the ACC is not going to see a Mason Smith, a guy that's 330 pounds. I'd rather have a little more beef this game and have Dylan in there or even, Darius Washington, just because I think they need more size against LSU, especially in that middle of that D line.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about those two guys and the difference in them. This comes down to offensive line coaching. The center position is more about, making sure everybody's on the same page, right? And I don't know if FSU the center makes all the calls or who exactly is making the calls, but I want the guy in there that is going to keep everything more organized, and just make it run smoothly. Because if you don't have that, if you're letting guys run with their size and speed, you whiff on a guy or somebody doesn't know who to block, it's bad news. Something really, really bad is going to happen. So to me, that's where I would go. I mean, hey, the Bucs are dealing with that same issue right now without Ryan Jensen. So it's the center position to me is more important than maybe any offensive line position these days.
Yeah, you're right. But I think Gibbons is a guy I trust. I think he's their best offensive lineman. I trust him anywhere on the offensive line. To be quite honest with you, based on what we've seen from him. But yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see how the offensive line rotation works. We saw them play 14 offensive linemen against Duquesne. Obviously, we don't expect that against LSU. I think you'll see them go back to the 7 and 8 man rotation we've become accustomed to since Mike's been here. Now, another, I don't listen. They've had video of him in practice this week. I did not go to practice this morning. I went to practice Tuesday, was paying attention to the offensive and defensive line, so I didn't see it. But I saw video of Winston Wright, who is, by resume, the most productive receiver FSU has on its roster. He's a transfer from West Virginia. Mm-hmm. He was videotaped returning kicks. I don't know that means he's going to play. We did not see him against Duquesne, but he is my X factor for the season if he's able to get back. But that could be something that could work to Florida State's advantage. Fish and JP. I don't want to talk necessarily about Winston because we haven't seen him, but we have seen the other receivers, and that has been a position that has not lived up to the FSU standard. We've heard Jimmy talk about LSU has always got great receivers. You would think the same thing at Florida State. You've got Micah Pittman in from Oregon. You've got Duspan in from Illinois. You've got Johnny Wilson in from Arizona State. We saw good things out of Malik McClain in camp, and we saw a great game by Kentron Portier on Saturday against Duquesne. What do you guys think about the receiving core heading into the big boy part of the schedule?
I hope Johnny Wilson's healthy. Do we have any word on whether I know he sprained an ankle or something. I don't know. Is he going to be able to play?
I'm anticipating him playing, but I don't know that as a fact.
Well, I'd love to see Winston Wright play. Like you said, he comes with great credentials and experience. So you love that in a big game like this. I don't know. He hasn't been practicing a lot, right? So I don't know what kind of continuity he'll have with Jordan Travis. I like what I saw, in the quick passing game and, wide receiver screens, and they seem to have some good execution level there. And listen, this wide receivers core is so much better. Where's Keyshawn Helton on this depth chart?
Keyshawn is not on the depth chart.
Exactly. These are guys that were the number one, pass receivers, and these guys, this group is so much better. They had to rapidly improve, and all these transfers are going to be so much better than what we've been working with for a long time. That's what's so exciting about Jordan. It's the first time he's had legitimate receivers and an offensive line that could give him at least maybe 2.5 seconds to throw the ball. We've never seen that from Jordan, and he's improved as a passer. So it's not just the receivers, but these guys are just head and shoulders above anything he's worked with in the past. And to have a little bit of time to do it with, we've never seen it. So I'm excited just to see that part of how good Jordan can be and how good the passing game can be, because it's a totally different dynamic.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt this is the most talent he has been surrounded with in his 3 years as starting quarterback. Fish, your thoughts on the receivers?
Well, Portier is the one kid, I thought he played well last week. It was nice to see him finally come out of his shell. They played better last week because they had to, the wide receiver room the last year or so has been a mess. I'll be able to tell you a lot more this week with what these guys could do. Johnny Wilson, he'll make a big play, but he also had the big drop. He had big drops in the spring game. So I need to see him do it in a game like this. He's a big kid. So he should get some matchups that are favorable to him. Pittman is what he is. I think a lot of people think because Pittman's small, he's fast. He's more of a possession receiver. He'll get the 10-yard catches and he'll help open up the middle of the field. I don't think he's a stretch the field guy. They're going to have to rely on Wilson and maybe Deuce Spawn to try to get some of those guys down the field. Is the one guy that I'm interested to see if he's back is Ja'Kai Douglas, because in the last two games that they've needed big plays, I believe in the Miami game, you also had it in the Notre Dame game too. He had a big, either a big touchdown in each game or a big catch. So he's the one guy on their team that can give them that big play. But the rest of the guys right now, it's a wait and see for me to see what these guys can do. We've heard great things, but until they actually go out and do it on Sunday night, I'm in a reserve mode basically with these guys.
I agree. I think that on the team as a whole, I think the next two games are going to kind of give us a better idea between LSU and Louisville what this team is all about. I do want to switch over to the defensive side of the ball. Y'all have mentioned that y'all thought the key matchups were going to be up front, offensive and defensive lines going against each other. This is would be a great game for Fabian Lovett, Robert Cooper, Dennis Briggs, Derek McClendon, and Jared Verse to prove us all right that they are the strength of this football team. Fish, you got to see, you watched the game, and so did you, JP. What are your thoughts on FSU's front? LSU has, I believe, 28 combined starts with the starting offensive line that they're going to come across with on Sunday. And Will Campbell, as we've already mentioned, will start as a true freshman at left tackle. I believe the Cam Wire leads them with 10 starts, so that leaves 18 starts between the other four guys, so relatively inexperienced. What should we expect from Florida State's defensive line?
Well, I like that interior with Cooper and Lovett. I mean, when you got big guys in there, it all starts right there. And I'm excited to see what Jared Verse can do, and coming off the edge, that's you're going to have to get heat on these quarterbacks and rush under control too. The kid from Arizona State, Daniels, is that
Daniels?
Yeah. He can run. I mean, those are plays that you got to be disciplined. And as much as I like to talk about the defensive line, Tatum Bethune looks like an actual real linebacker that can run and play. And when's the last time we had one of those?
Been a while.
It's just that just makes such a difference. And of course, the linebackers are only as good as the guys in front of them. So it just seems to me that the front seven, if we look at the front seven, it's much improved, and it's going to have to be against a team like this.
Yeah, DJ Lundy's listed as a co-starter with Kalen DeLoach at the other linebacker position, and DJ certainly looks like he has taken the next step in his development. He's shed a bunch of weight. He's down about 15 pounds, runs better. Kalen's obviously a guy that can make plays all over the field. And what we saw, and we'll see a little bit different schematically, but what we saw against Duquesne was those defensive interior tackles not really two gapping and kind of a modified heavy technique where they're really leaning on those guards and allowing those linebackers to run all over the field. And that's what we saw with Tatum. He was making plays in between the tackles. He was making plays sideline to sideline, which is, as you've mentioned, JP, is something that FSU fans have grown accustomed to over the history of the program, especially going back before Coach Bowden with Reggie Herring and Paul Perouse.
Yeah.
They've always had great linebackers, and it's been like I don't know what you want to call it, but definitely it dried up around here on the linebacker.
It's been a dry stretch.
It looks like we've got one in Tatum Bethune, and I think what you got to hope, and I've said this in a written article, that you got to hope that whether it's Deloach or Lundy or maybe all of them, they step their game up more towards what Tatum's doing as opposed to what they've done in the past. And of course, it does look like Amari Gaynor will not be available for this game. They have not totally ruled him out, but Amari had a fairly productive Saturday against Duquesne. And, for all, he might not be the perfect player, but he is a very active player for Florida State. Yeah. Fish, how do you think Amari's absence will impact this game?
Listen, he plays on special teams, and linebackers play on special teams. It hurts. They don't have a lot of depth there. Bethune is just a different guy. Listen, he doesn't take false steps. He's able to drop back into coverage and get depth. He is an old school Florida State linebacker, and his ability to run sideline to sideline, and instinctually, he's the best linebacker they've had probably since like Telvin Smith. I mean, the kid is a different. The other guys have a long way to go to get to where Bethune is. Like Bethune is the guy in that linebacker core. I was very impressed with him last week. I knew he was good, but he looked different. You know, you didn't see that hesitation. Like when he saw something before the snap, he was already flowing to that side of the ball. Like he knew his assignments. And that's something that these other guys really, I don't know if they just don't know the game as well as him. His football IQ seems off the charts. And that's very hard to find now. I've told you before, I think linebacker, especially at the high school level, and Jimmy could jump in and talk about this, it's the hardest position to evaluate now out of high school because most linebackers do not play traditional linebacker spots. They either play off the edge as a rush guy, they put them in the slot. You don't see guys between the tackles anymore and having to understand what the offense is doing. And that's so big. That's what makes Tatum so good. He's a true traditional linebacker that could do so much. I think he's probably the MVP of that defense. Like I really think they got to keep that kid healthy because of what he can do and what he's going to do this year. He has a chance to be an all-conference type player in the ACC.
Oh, there's no doubt they got to keep him healthy. You're right. They're razor thin at linebacker. They cannot lose Tatum Bethune. Unfortunately, football is still a very physical game, so he's going to get dinged up at some point playing linebacker. You just got to hope when he's dinged up, it's a couple plays and he's right back in there. Because I don't know if they have anybody. Take him off the field. Someone's certainly going to have to step up big time to fill his shoes based on what we know right now. All right, let's move back to the secondary. We've talked a little bit about them. If you can give up 100 and something yards and be disappointed in a position group, I guess that's the position group we were disappointed in coming out of that game. Although I thought they played well other than a couple of passes. But they. Based on reputation, this might be the best receiver group they play against all year. Jimmy's already told us he thinks they've got about 4 or 5 guys that'll end up in the NFL out of that position group. I think that Kevin Knowles, Amari, and Cooper have a chance to be really good players. We know Jamie Robinson is. He's one of the most productive players in college football in the secondary over the course of the last 4 years between his time at South Carolina and Florida State. Akeem Dent's the guy that's on NFL radars for this upcoming spring draft. And, we've seen continued progress out of Renardo Green. How Fish does Florida State put itself in a position to shut down or at least limit a very talented LSU receiving corps?
Yeah, I don't know why Amari Cooper was out last week, but he needs to be back. Jerrion Jones is not an option in that secondary not this week. Maybe he gets a little better as the season goes on, but Amari Cooper is a very important player. He could help shut down one side of the field. He's their best cover corner. He could do so much. He comes up and he plays the run well. He's physical with receivers. You don't want to just be stuck out there with Jerrion. And then you got smaller guys like Knowles and Greedy Vance. These guys aren't physically the type of guys you want to put against. I mean, Jimmy said they had a 6'4", 220-pound receiver. I don't want to see any of their small corners on that guy. I have never seen the kid play. I know that's a bad matchup. So, to me, Cooper's the most important player in that secondary that he comes back. He didn't play last week. I think he needs to play this week for FSU to have success on that back end.
JP, what are your thoughts on the secondary and what FSU can do back there, and obviously in combination with the front to shut
down? I think what Fish brought out, I think the corners are the weakest part of the defense, to be quite honest with you. But the safeties, I think, are the strength. And, our good friend Mickey Andrews says all the time that a good safety makes up for a lot of ills on the defense, right? And you don't want to give up cheap plays. And that's what, good safeties, keep what could be an explosive play to a 12, 13-yard gain. I mean, those are some of the biggest plays of the game that kind of get hidden, right? You make that solo tackle when a guy's going down the sideline, it's a big play. And, Jamie and Akeem are, I think, as good a safety tandem as you'll find in football. They're going to have to make up for these corners. And I would probably advise against playing a lot of aggressive man-to-man and maybe do a lot more cover 2, and just allow the safeties to kind of limit the damage, so to speak. But I think that's going to be a key. Those guys have to tackle when they need to make those big tackles, because when you got that kind of size and speed on the outside, they get down that Superdome turf pretty quick.
All right. Well, listen, it's going to be a hell of a game, I think, and I do want to get predictions from everybody before we go. I do listen. If we were at a tailgate party, there's going to be some other games. We're going to talk about some other things going on in the world of football. But I have to ask this question because we have JP on the show, and he reports on the. He goes to the Bucs practices on a regular basis at every Bucs game at home in Tampa. What in the world is going on with Tom Brady?
Everybody wants to know. Well, I tell you, my sources tell me, and I've got some good sources that live near where he lives on Davis Island. You go to the Davis Island Coffee Bar, and all the ladies are talking in their Lululemons. This is where you get the good news. And I got all the best sources over there. I think Tom is in a pretty bad place from a family standpoint. We'll just leave it at that. I think he's dealing with a lot of stuff. Giselle and the kids that are down in Miami, I think they're going to school down in Miami. So he's been kind of solo up here. I got some information that there's just, there's a lot of strain in the marriage right now. And, like the rest of us, just, Tom Brady's no different than the rest of us. When you got kids and you got a wife and they all pulling at you, and he's got so many different businesses going on right now. This is unlike any season he's ever played before. There are way too many pressures, and more pressures than he's ever dealt with. I think there's been a time when he's probably second guessed coming back, but at this point he's all in. I think all that's behind him. He took the 11 days off to be with his family and get all that right and get into as good a headspace as he could get into. And now it's just, if anybody can take adversity, even off the field, and turn it into a positive, it's Tom Brady. So from a football standpoint, the break didn't hurt him at all. It was probably good to give his arm a rest. He's 45 years old, but he still throws as good and with as much velocity and accuracy as he ever has. I mean, I've said that since I've seen him here in Tampa, with my own eyes at practice up close. He can throw it as good as anybody in the game, and I'll put him up against Patrick Mahomes and Burrow and anybody. He can rip it like nobody's business. He's still got it. And I think he'll play very well this year. I think he's going to play really, really well. He'll compartmentalize it. He'll be okay. Their offensive line scares the hell out of me at this point. They're very, very thin. If their center goes down, they are effed. They are. I thought that they would make a move and go get a veteran or do something. They have not. So if they get any more injuries inside, they'll be calling you, Pat. They are super thin. I think they'll have a good year. Overall, the team is stacked. They're stacked. They'll be fine.
Dude, Pat gets hurt just walking around his apartment.
I am not afraid to get run over by somebody. That is for sure.
Under that kind of money.
That's true. All right, so we're all big college football fans. Quickly, I know Fish is on a time limit, as probably all of you are. But there's been more talk about college football expansion this week. Oregon and Washington have both had meetings with the Big Ten. If you believe what you read, there's no reason not to. And there was an article out yesterday that college football could be set to go to a 12-team playoff by 2024. I'll start with you, JP. When does the next shoe drop in college football expansion? And will it be Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten? And I heard Paul Feinbaum talk about Florida State possibly being an SEC-bound program at some point. What are your thoughts on expansion?
I think FSU and Clemson are headed for the SEC. I think Miami may be in the SEC or headed to the Big Ten. I think they're all going to be leaving the ACC. Expansion is on the horizon. I think the college football playoff is going to expand now because these schools are seeing a lot of their money they used to get go to NIL to pay the players, which is a good thing. So they're trying to recoup and find more money. There's $450 million in revenue if they start the playoff next year. So money talks, and I'm saying that it'll expand starting next season.
All right, Fish, college football expansion and playoff.
I couldn't agree more. I've always said this. FSU fans need to be patient. Like, I know it's frustrating, but I do believe that FSU is going to end up in the SEC. It's just a natural fit, along with, I definitely think Miami and Clemson, you'll see them. And the one surprise team you're going to be surprised that I'm going to say this is Georgia Tech, just because of the Atlanta market and how much, eyes are on. At the end of the day, JP will tell you this. It's eyeballs. Florida State still to this day is one of the highest watched teams. And that's why they're big for anybody, whether it's ESPN or Fox. And Georgia Tech, that Georgia market, being in Atlanta is huge. That's a lot of people that live in Atlanta. I believe that Georgia Tech will end up in the SEC as well.
And Dion will be the coach there next year. So there, I mean, that's going to draw eyeballs as well. So Dion's the next head coach, Georgia Tech. You heard it here
Ooh.
first. Jimmy, thoughts on college football expansion, college football playoffs?
Absolutely inevitable. I've kind of been an 8 playoff team guy for a while, but I think if you're going to the super conference mold, which I believe we're headed towards, I think 12 might be the number here, because you're third, fourth, fifth best team coming out of the SEC with a hypothetical Florida State, Clemson, Miami type of jolt to that conference. I mean, that team is probably as good as any of your 10th, 11th, 12th ranked teams. So I think we're headed there. I don't think Miami and Florida State make the jump. I don't think you have 3 representatives from the state of Florida. So I expect one of those programs to probably head elsewhere. I think Georgia Tech is one of the sleeping giants in the country. Look, if Georgia Tech recruits a high-profile coach and reduces its academic standings a little bit, its academic requirements a little bit, and kind of opens themselves up to some of the Southern athletes, that's a powerhouse that's just kind of sleeping. I've always thought that. And I think, Fish, we've had this conversation for a while now. Like, that's a sleeper program. If anybody ever unlocks that, it could really, take off and become one of those super programs. They're also good in other sports and have history there as well. I do think that's the way we're heading. I'm all for it, to be honest. I'm tired of seeing 4 or 5 good games a year from college play, from Alabama and so on. I think when you have Oklahoma's and Texas, and as an SEC guy, and you're starting to pick, the top programs from other conferences and develop the super conference, I think it's good for football as a whole for the fan. I think it's going to produce some great matchups that otherwise we haven't been able to see. No more Florida States and Duquesnes. I'm telling you.
I think we're so far past those games with the money that's in college football. I could spend an entire hour talking about this.
Get rid of them. I think LSU opens up.
I liked it this year, though. I like we got to practice it this year, though. That was good.
All right. Well, hey, I want to talk about. I got 5 games I wanted us to pick outside of Florida State, LSU, but we saw week 0 was pretty much a dud except for in Ireland, right? We saw our first upset of the year. Scott Frost got beat by Northwestern. Fish, you heard me call it here last week. Pat Fitzgerald was going to go to Ireland. He was going to win that game, and that's what he did.
I look good. I
beat people when they're not supposed to be good. All right. So, does Scott Frost survive this year? And are Scott Frost and Mark Whipple going to be exchanging holiday cards after Scott Frost threw him under the bus after the game?
Oh man, Scott Frost once threw me under a bus, so it's no. But
you started yourself under a bus right now.
Yeah, listen, I predicted that they were the one team I took a shot at a flyer on, thinking, man, I look good halfway through that Northwestern game with Nebraska playing on their side of the Big Ten, but man, hopefully they don't lose to North or South Dakota State this week, or he won't make it.
You gotta watch out those jackrabbits.
Supposedly there's like a drop in his salary after October 1st, so that's like the date to look at. If
buyout, yes.
Yeah, if his buyout drops and they lose another game or 2, he's gone mid-season.
All right. Well, here we'll quit picking on old Scott for right now. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that as the season goes on. All right. So let's go with our picks. Now I probably should have sent you guys these games, but I didn't. My first game I picked is NC State, who is supposed to be a favorite in ACC, going to a place that's very unpredictable, Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium in little Greenville, North Carolina. Takes about 3 hours to get to Greenville from anywhere in America. 11.5-point underdog at home are the Pirates, who have a history of knocking off NC State, North Carolina, Virginia Tech on a regular basis when they come to their place. I'm picking the Pirates. Who do you guys have? NC State against East Carolina.
I've been to Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium more than once, my friend, when I worked in North Carolina. You're right. It's a hard place to get to, but I think I'm going to say the Pirates cover, but NC State wins a game.
I'm with JP. They'll cover the spread because it's such a large number, but that's going to be a 30-27 type game, 30-24. East Carolina will keep it close, maybe have the lead at halftime. I still think NC State's a really good football team. And
Yeah.
the one thing you need when you travel is a defense, and they may have the best defense in the ACC. So
You got that. I'm not going to say they're better than Clemson's defense, but they're pretty good. They got the best linebackers in the ACC and might have the best linebackers in the country. Jimmy, who you got? NC State, East Carolina.
Yeah, I'm gonna go NC State, and I do think they're gonna cover, and I think it's gonna be largely because of that defense. I think East Carolina is gonna have a hard time putting up the points necessary to keep that game close. So I'm gonna go ahead with a 17 point victory for the Wolfpack.
And we're going to keep it right here in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina, Mac Brown goes to the place where he got to start as a head coach, Appalachian State. Appy's not an easy place to play. They've been a really good program the last 10 years. They're a 1.5 point underdog. Mac Brown and his team are coming off a very uninspired performance against a FAMU team that did not have 20 of its players. And I've got Appy over at North Carolina. I think North Carolina is one of the most overrated programs in America. They're kind of soft, as we have seen over the years. But I'm going with the Dogs. And
I'm with you. I'm with you. It's the battle of the teams with the two most beautiful stadiums in America. I tell you what, I've been to Boone many times, and it is gorgeous. It's a gorgeous setting, and those at home, they're going to beat North Carolina. This is the biggest game for them in 3 years. They're going to beat. They love beating North Carolina. I like the Mountaineers.
yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, I think Drake May is going to be a future first-round pick, the quarterback in North Carolina. He is a big-time quarterback. The first time I saw him, he was committed to Alabama at the time, and I remember telling a buddy of mine, "This kid's better than Sam Howell." And he put up 5 touchdowns this week. I think he's going to have no problem scoring on them. It is a little concerning that they had such a tough game against a FAMU team, and I'm not a big Mac Brown fan, but I see them pulling this out. They'll probably win a close game, but I like North Carolina just because of the quarterback. I think they have the better quarterback.
Jimmy, who you got?
Yeah, quarterback's where it's at, man. I'm gonna roll behind Fish on this one. I think UNC is able to pull it out. I think last week's performance maybe gave Mac Brown and that staff the juice they needed to kind of rally up the troops, if you will. Not the most physical team, so I don't know if they'll be able to dominate the line of scrimmage against Appalachian State, but I do think the quarterback plays the difference here, and they're going to be able to pull it out.
All right, well, y'all have mentioned quarterback play, and this makes this next game very interesting. Oregon and Bo Nix travel back south to take on Stetson Bennett and UGA as they come out in their national title defense. Of course, it's got some Florida State connections with Kenny Dillingham and at Oregon as the OC. I think Oregon's going to get throttled regardless of who's quarterback. But I'm going UGA big. What do you guys think?
Go Dogs. Go Dogs. Come on. It's the SEC.
I see Bo Nix play a lot. There's no way I'm ever picking him and whatever team he's starting for. I'm not a Bo Nix fan. And Georgia, I watched them in their spring game, and honestly, it looked like there was no drop off. You know, they have just one NFL guy after another. Georgia's just loaded. They're going to win it.
Jimmy, who you got?
Yeah, I think Georgia's going to kind of win this one in a landslide, to be honest. Wouldn't surprise me to see 20, 30 point type victory here. I think they're just too big and too bad up front across the board for Oregon. And I think you're going to see the discrepancy between the SEC premier and the elite team to the Pac-12, and you're going to see what that actually looks like.
Now, JP, this one's probably you and I are the only ones that have an interest in it. So, but I'm going to ask you because I've got a friend that's the head coach there, and you obviously cover their program. BYU comes to USF. Jeff Scott, important year, third year. They brought in a lot of transfers, and including I think it's Bohannon from Baylor as the quarterback. 12-point underdog at home. Again, they've been really down for the last couple of years. Does USF have any chance at knocking off BYU at home?
Big time, big time. In fact, I had Gary Bohannon on my show today, right off the practice field. And I tell you what, this guy's the real deal, man. He is the real deal. He threw for 11,300 yards in high school, 121 touchdowns, and ran for 70 more and 6,000 yards. He was the number 9 dual threat quarterback, I think, coming out and won 9 games at Baylor last year. He throws the ball like a freaking pro. He's 6'3", 220, and he can flat out play. They've got some good skill position players now at USF. They did a hell of a job in the portal, and they almost beat BYU up there last year.
They played really well against BYU up there last year.
I like USF in an upset. They just announced today they're building a stadium. They'll have it done by 2026, an on-campus stadium.
That is
USF's going places, baby.
That is awesome. I'm so happy. I wish we'd had that on-campus stadium.
Yeah, I know, right?
I think if we had it, we still might be there. But instead, I sit here talking to you guys. So. All right. So before we get to Florida State, LSU, the University of Utah comes down from Salt Lake to take on the Gators. Utes are a 3-point favorite. They've been one of the best teams in the Pac-12 over the last 3 years. Very physical football team. Kyle Willingham,
yeah.
Has really the job he's done since taking over from Urban Meyer has been remarkable. I think he's been there almost 20 years now, something like that. I've got Utah over Florida in the swamp. Fish, I'll let you start. Who you have in that game?
Yeah, Utah is a better football team. I think this Florida team is going to really struggle this year. And it's nothing against Billy Napier. I just don't. I think they're going to go through the same kind of growing pains that Mike Norvell's going at Florida State. There's not a lot of depth on that team. There's not a lot of playmakers. They lost a lot of players. They're really one Anthony Richardson injury away from only winning 3 or 4 games this year. I just think Utah, watching them last year against Ohio State, watching them against Oregon, they are not your typical Pac-10 team or Pac-12 team. They play SEC style football, very physical up front. They punch you in the mouth. They got their quarterback back. They got those running backs back. I just think they're going to wear Florida out, and by the second half, win pretty easily in that game. I think the -3 is a gift for anybody that likes to put a little jingle on a game, but I like Utah in that game.
I'm pounding the Utes with the mortgage this week. Yeah, the 17 returning starters. I echo everything Fish just said at all the key positions. Florida's. I think they'll if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, they'll be okay by the end of the season. But first game for him, for Napier, new systems. Yeah, this is a professional football team coming in there in the Utes. Right. I think they have a good chance of making the playoff too. To be honest with you, I think they're really, really good.
Jimmy, who you got?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rough year for Florida. I'm a Napier guy. I know him well from his time at UL and Arizona State and Alabama and so on. But I think this is going to be a bad Florida team. I think they're going to struggle to see 6-6 this year, to be honest. I think Utah is very physical, far more physical than Florida. They'll take it to them. And I think this game has the potential to be a blowout for the Utes, to be honest. I think, when you have a new coach and I'm not sure everybody's bought in yet. I've been listening to the birds chirping down there in Gainesville, and I'm not sure everyone's on board. And if you find yourself down 14, down 17 points, how quickly do those players turn off the switch? And that turned into a 30-point game. So it wouldn't surprise me. I'd be more shocked if Florida won than I would be if Utah won by 30. Let's put it that way. I think Utah walks away with this game.
All right, as I have In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins playing in my head, let's move back to Florida State LSU. Fish, what's your pick? And if you pick FSU, which player or position group are we talking about on Monday morning?
I will say this. This is the most confident I felt about FSU actually winning a game against a better opponent. I just don't know if they'll do it on Sunday night. I think that LSU's D-line is going to control the game. I'm concerned about FSU's tackles, and I've said this a million times. Jordan's a great kid. I'm not putting my money on Jordan Travis. He's very limited. I think if LSU stops him and they force him to pass the football, I think FSU will end up losing the game, which I see a 27-24 game. Maybe FSU has a lead late in the game. LSU pulls it out 27-24 is my prediction.
All right, as my battery's going dead,
Okay, go ahead, JP.
Let me get this in real quick. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I actually bought tickets and they weren't cheap, which I never do because I'm a sportscaster. So if they don't freaking win, I'm going to be pissed off. So I'm damn well picking FSU to win this game. I think they got a shot. I'm a continuity guy, and I think it's going to take a little while. LSU they're talented, but I don't know, just like Florida, I don't think they bought in yet to the Brian Kelly stuff. So I think FSU is going to win. I think Jordan might surprise you, Fish.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting, man.
Better than you think he is.
JP, one thing is, and I keep bringing this up, he's never thrown for 300 yards in a game. This is a guy that's a quarterback at a major university.
He's been running for his life
well.
for 2 years.
JP is
God bless him.
300 when you're running 300 yards the other way.
God bless you, man.
No receivers, no O-line, and you want a 300-yard game?
You could put your money on him. I'll like, man.
Hey, Fish, if they run it 40 times against LSU, he's not going to throw for 300 yards in this game.
I think he's going to have to throw it a lot in this game.
You
That's
can't
my
have
only
it both
concern.
ways.
I know, but I told you, if they run for, they run for 200 plus, that's what I think they need to get to that 175 to 200. And they don't, they take it out of Jordan's hands. I don't believe he can win this game. That's just my belief. If they're going to win, it's going to be with their defense. They're going to dominate LSU up front, and they're going to win with their run game. If they do that, then I think they have like I said, I think Florida State really legitimately has a shot in this game where I didn't think they had a shot last year against Notre Dame. I didn't think they had a shot against Clemson. I really didn't think they had a shot against Miami or even Florida. But I've said, I think they have a shot because of some of those things that JP and you talked about. It is, that first year thing. And Brian Kelly, I think he's a top 5 coach. I've told you that before. I think he's a great coach, but sometimes you don't know what's going to happen in that first game. And FSU's been under Norvell for 3 times. It wouldn't shock me if FSU won, where last year, if you asked me, I thought they would have had no shot. So I'm not saying they don't have a shot because I do think they do.
Well, and Jimmy gave us his pick earlier, and he's got LSU. I believe it was 31-7.
He could change his pick. I mean, we could always
after getting educated by us. Are you sure you don't want to come to the good side, Jimmy?
Hey,
honestly, I would probably stretch that lead out even more.
Pat, what we could do is do like a good tout. He could give the FSU prediction on this one, and he could say, "Listen, I hit on 100% of my picks. You just already."
Yeah, well, I could do it. Could be like the what they do with the recruiting stuff, kind of figure get the future cast after they've been told where the kids go.
Hey, he'll just crystal ball.
I'll just release this tailgate show after the game's over. That way, my pick can be right.
He'll crystal ball it, and he has 100% rating, even though he picked after the kid picked.
That drives me so. I could talk about that for an hour. That drives me crazy too. But we're not talking about recruiting right now. But I've got FSU. I'm with JP. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I've got them 29-27 with a last-second field goal that goes Florida State's way. You
have to peel me off Bourbon Street if that happens, baby.
Hey, either way, you guys are drinking a lot. I know that. The over-under on drinks. We're looking at, listen, the Osceola tab on that one. Jerry's going to have to cut some people.
Listen,
hey, Fish, step in my office.
He's going down there for 3 days. It's going to be quite the trip.
Oh man, that's going to be one hefty
I
tab.
think all the reasons that y'all talked about. First game for LSU, first year in the program. Florida State's never been this talented. They have a little bit more confidence than we've used to seeing them play with the last 2 years. They've got some playmakers on offense. We think, as you said, Fish, we'll find out for sure. But they are better than they have been in any of Mike's 2 previous seasons. And I think that, other than LSU probably being as healthy as they'll be all year because it is their first game, I do think that there's going to be some things that they're going to have to work through. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Florida State reacts to adversity. But I think this team is targeted this game all year. I think it'll get there since the end of last season. I think this is a game that's been on this team's radar. I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid this game, go FSU.
That's what I'm talking
29, LSU 27, and we'll re-rack them next week. But, guys, I know you got to go. I appreciate everybody joining me on the Osceola Tailgate pregame show. JP, Jimmy, Fish, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. It was fun.
Back in next week.
It was, man. Great talking to you, JP, man.
All right,
Good to
guys.
see you guys.
Go Noles.